Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you, Robert, and Robert is my friend. And I won't say it from here, but I'll tell you some stories about our couple months living in an apartment together in Boston if you want to talk to me over a drink tonight at the reception. Thank you, Bob. Thank you to the Canadian Executive Board for the opportunity, and I bring you greetings. One of my board members and one of my leaders is in the room, Jim Grogan from the Insulators, but I bring you greetings from the entire Governing Board of Presidents of North America's Building Trades Unions. And also I have with me here my partner and my friend who's helping me do the day-to-day work for the building trades, Brent Booker, our Secretary-Treasurer. I know where you're at, Brent. Thanks for your friendship. And as usual, I want to update you on what's going on, particularly in the United States. And I know over the last couple of years, you know, my comments left a little sour taste as I try to be as honest as I can with the situation we're facing in the United States. And it's been pretty dreadful over the last 5, going on 6 years now. But there's some good news. There's some, there's some sun on the horizon, and we can see a path forward. Just last week, the Bureau of Labor Statistics come out with the updated unemployment numbers and employment numbers in the United States. And the good news is that overall unemployment in the United States has ticked down. Almost 300,000 jobs were created last month. And for the construction industry, for the first time since 2008, unemployment in the construction industry in the United States is under 10%. That's good news, but that's not great news. What that means is there's still in excess of 800,000 construction workers in the United States unemployed. But our economy is getting better. We still face massive challenges. The finances of the country are in very bad shape, counties, cities, states, and we just have a political system, as you know, that's totally in disarray in the United States right now. But for the building trades, we continue to follow our strategic approach, and we're getting into year 2 now, and it's two-pronged, and it's based on successful models. And the ultimate goal is market share growth, membership growth, contractor growth, and growth of the middle class in the United States. It's a two-pronged approach. One is a heavy concentration in metropolitan areas of the United States, where successful models have been developed and are maturing, and membership growth and influence in the community and politically have grown, which has benefited scores of people. The focus of this approach in the major metropolitan areas is to bring together women, minority, veterans, people who have historically not enjoyed the opportunities to learn skill sets and move into the middle class through the building trades in some areas of the country. Build coalitions with these groups and groups that support these groups, and use our combined power to make sure that when developers and owners in the private sector and developers and owners in the public sector are going to deploy capital, private capital and tax capital to build infrastructure, that it has the maximum effect of lifting as many boats as it can, and making sure that politicians understand the power of these coalitions so that where construction is taking place, where tax dollars are being spent, where private capital is being deployed with the assistance in the regulatory and political environment in a metropolitan area, that there are standards set and there are expectations that are expected to be met to make sure, again, that we have the maximum tide lifting the maximum amount of boats. And the key hole for us is training. We possess the ability, through our training infrastructure in the United States and in Canada, to train massive amounts of people with skill sets that will last them a lifetime. Using the leverage of our training and building these coalitions, and on top of that, when need be, on the private side and increasingly in private-public partnerships, on public infrastructure, bringing our resources, our pension investments through the vehicles such as ULICO's J for Jobs, MEPT, HIT-BIT, others, to help finance portions of the projects and set the labor standards and set the requirements for prerequisite numbers of women, minorities, and veterans to participate in those construction projects. We're holistically approaching the marketplace. And like I said, where we've been doing this for some time, we're having great success. Increased market share as the economy comes back, as building starts, people are used to this system and they see the benefits. It lessens the strains on the social safety net when you lift people out of the potential of having to rely on that safety net and you give them a pathway to the middle class through the skilled trades. It's exciting. And now we are focusing all across the United States in metropolitan areas, large and small, to make sure that there's a program in place, to make sure that not only do we have a seat at the table, but our coalition partners have a seat at the table. And with that, we bring a certain amount of power so that private developers and public officials have to listen to us and have to take our input when they're making decisions on how public infrastructure is going to be built and what allowances they're going to give for private developers to build in that area. We're very excited about this. I know that Canadian Building Trades has done a fantastic job with women in the trades. I know that some staff and many of the women of the Canadian Building Trades recently attended a conference in the United States in California for the women in the trades in California and the United States. My understanding is there was over 900 or almost 900 participants, women from all across the United States and Canada participated in. We're serious about this. This is not your grandfather's building trades. We will not be stereotyped anymore about who we are and what we are. We're about opportunity for everybody that wants an opportunity. We're about giving a helping hand. We're about leveraging our resources to maintain and build in the middle class in North America that is under siege. So I'm very proud of the work that the Canadian office has done with women in the trades. I'm excited about what we've done in the United States and Canada for our veterans. I'm excited about what we continue to do across the provinces in Canada and across the United States for minorities and people of First Nations. That's the future in the major metropolitan areas. Everybody gets a shot. Everybody that wants a shot gets a shot. We can't solve all of society's ills, but the high road construction industry can certainly be part of it. And we're doing our part. We'll continue to do our part. We're very excited. And it has the added benefit for us of leading increased market share, increased contractor base, and increased membership. It's a win-win-win for everybody. That's one prong. The second prong is major industrial work in the United States. And I'm happy to report, finally, not without old struggles and new struggles, but finally, we're at the tipping point in the United States where we can thoughtfully extract and use our natural resources, as you have done in Canada over the last decade or so, to really create opportunities. Talking about gas and oil. I'm talking about major industrial projects, major private capital investment by many of the same owners that you work with that are now deploying that capital in the United States. I'm talking about major private equity firms and others from Wall Street who are in this sector and investing. And I'm talking about big projects. I'm talking about gas terminals for natural gas LNG exports. I'm talking about new plants, new manufacturing plants. I'm talking about fertilizer plants. We're building fertilizer plants in the United States for the first time in almost 3 decades. And the reason we're building fertilizer plants in the United States for the first time in almost 3 decades is because the cost of the fuel stock, that's being extracted in the United States now makes it feasible to build fertilizer plants in Iowa and Indiana and Illinois and Missouri as opposed to India and other places in near Asia. And on the petrochemical side, the same story, massive amounts of investment. Building chemical manufacturing plants, again, plants that haven't been built in the United States in decades. And it's because of cheap, abundant, safe fuels. Fuels extracted that don't have to be imported, that keep the cost of manufacturing down, that enable these capital investments to build these projects. I'm talking about 6 proposed crackers in the United States. Last week, Brent Booker, I believe on Friday, completed negotiations with Shell on a cracker to be built in southwest Pennsylvania outside of Pittsburgh. I don't have to tell anybody in this room that in its heyday, Pittsburgh, and you know the Pittsburgh Steelers, was a one-horse town when it came to industry. It was the steel industry. Pittsburgh has had a tough time for a long time. They've diversified their economy, and they've come back, but the steel industry has not. This one project is $7 billion and 30 million man-hours for our building trades brothers and sisters, southwest Pennsylvania, because of the Marcellus shale finds in Pennsylvania that'll be the fuel stock to feed that cracker. Outside of Washington, D.C., we have 4 projects totaling $8 billion within 50 miles of the city: a gas transport, LNG transport terminal, and 3 natural gas power plants. Within 50 miles of the city, $8 billion of work. That's the story across the country. But the epicenter for the energy industry in the United States, much like it's centered primarily in Alberta and Canada, is in the Gulf Coast area, in Texas, Louisiana, Mississippi. The amount of investment that is planned to be made and is being made across the Gulf Coast in the United States is staggering. I don't hear numbers like this unless and until Bob reports to the Governing Board of Presidents on the amount of investments that are happening in Canada in the energy sector. But it's exciting. And for the first time in 30 years, North America's building trades have opened a new office in Houston, Texas. We've opened an office in Houston, Texas. We're staffing it with market development professionals, Veterans Outreach Program, and we're firmly planting our flag in the state of Texas, where over the next 15 years, the needs of the construction industry from a demographic perspective for existing construction workers, an aging workforce, and to meet the future demands of this capital investment, are going to require tens of thousands, hundreds of thousands of new people brought into the industry and taught skill sets to be productive in capital construction and maintenance. For the first time in 30 years, we're back in the game in Texas, and people are actually sitting at the table, listening what the building trades have to say, and taking a real hard look at what we have to supply for them. It's a very exciting time for the building trades in North America. It's very exciting to be back in the game in the state of Texas across that Gulf Coast. But all that being said, we still have political ramifications to deal with across the country. I know we have the United States Ambassador that I had the pleasure to sit with this morning, who'll be speaking shortly, who will update us on some of the work of the United States government. The polarization of the politics in the United States is getting worse, not better. Entrenched forces on each side of the political aisle make it virtually impossible to put the country first, as opposed to putting their political party first. Radical segments of each political party are driving their party's agenda to the detriment, in my opinion, of the country. They can't come to the center, make decisions. They put pressure, as do we, as do I, as does my board, on the President of the United States. When we don't think he makes timely decisions or the right decisions, whether it's about a pipeline or training or other issues that are very important to the building trades, to the construction industry, to the middle class, and will continue to speak out and be unafraid, because that's what living in a democracy is all about. You're allowed to express your opinion. That's why we have a First Amendment in the United States. And when we disagree, we'll do it respectfully. And when we agree, we'll do it wholeheartedly. And right now we have a hard time understanding what's going on and where we're going. And we'll continue to support our president. And we'll continue to give our expertise, try to help the administration understand what our perspective is, what we think is good for the country, what we think is good for our economy, what we think is good for North American energy security, North American national security. All we ask is that decisions get made in a timely way. Yes or no. We're big boys and big girls. We can disagree, we can agree. But let's make decisions to keep our economy moving, growing. We're worried about income inequality in the United States, which is all the rage now because it's political season. You're damn right there's income inequality. One of the ways to fix part of that income inequality is to build big infrastructure projects, public infrastructure, private infrastructure, create jobs, have that trickle effect, lift people out of poverty, teach them skill sets that last a lifetime in the construction trades. When I meet with people, I tell people, politicians and leaders, if you teach a man or a woman to be a plumber, and God forbid, the United Association goes away the next day, that family will live in the middle class for the next 2 years because of the skill sets that that man or woman was taught when they went through that apprenticeship training program with the United Association. The surest way to maintain the middle class and to build the middle class and to squeeze down on income inequality is to invest in infrastructure, private and public. I will not, like other labor leaders in the United States, ever rail against how much a CEO makes. We have a different perspective in the building trades. We don't care how much a CEO makes. What we care about is that the CEO, the leader of that organization, treats his employees fairly, has them work in safe environments, and gives them decent compensation with benefits. We know that our contractors, in order to be successful, in order to create work opportunities for our members, have to make money. The more money they make, the more opportunity it creates for our members. We believe in a capitalist system, so we're not going to tear anybody down because they're having success. The people on the outskirts, the pigs, yes, we will point fingers and we will criticize them. The billionaires that want to control the United States on both sides, and make no doubt about it, there are billionaires on the left that we fight every day who support the radical environmental community in the United States, who are fighting tooth and nail through the regulatory process, through the permitting process, and through the courts in almost every major gas or oil project that we have an agreement on in the United States, that are keeping tens of thousands of your brothers and sisters out of work. Lots of them are funded by these so-called do-gooder boy billionaires on the left. They can talk all they want in the press about the billionaires on the right who are trying to influence the politics of the United States. That's true. They very rarely talk about these same radicals on the left who are holding our economy back in many cases. This is something that we deal with every day, and we fight them every day because they can't be reasonable, they can't be sensible, they can't compromise, and they can't put country first, just like the politicians in Washington. Country has to come first at some point. The people have to come first. That's the way it's supposed to be in a democracy. And right now we're struggling with that. So with all that said, I'm eternally optimistic. I believe that in the North America's building trades, over the next 10 to 15 years, we'll grow by 500,000 members because of a strategy and a strategic approach that I described and which Robert described, and the one thing that we have, our whole card, that is so important, that our forefathers and foresisters had the foresight over 100 years to invest in skilled craft recruitment and training. The greatest decision ever made by building trades leaders was to invest in training infrastructure, to continue to upgrade the skills, to make those investments. Training is it. Whether it was in Alberta a couple weeks ago, meeting with some of the owners and some of the contractors, whether it was in Wichita, Kansas, last Thursday when I met with Koch Industries, or any other company or CEO that I meet with, they all want to know, can you recruit and can you train the next generation workforce so that I can comfortably make a decision to deploy billions, if not tens of billions, of my company's capital in new capital construction and maintenance? And I can answer yes. And the reason I can answer yes is because of the training infrastructure that our forefathers built, that still exists, that we expand upon. And our ability to recruit minorities, women, veterans, and anybody else that wants an opportunity to learn skill sets that last a lifetime. The answer to that question is yes. And the work that's being done up here with the jobs grant that you've recently got or will get, working with First Nations, our opportunity, as we spoke to the ambassador this morning and will continue to pursue, a protocol for North America between the United States and Canada for a reasonable, rational way to move skilled craft construction, union-skilled craft construction workers across the border back and forth who have the same skill sets, have gone through the same training, belong to the same organization, speak the same language. Training is going to be a key to that. We can't be any prouder and we can't do any more to prove to anybody that when it comes to recruitment and training of skilled crafts in North America, the building trades is where it's at. Nobody else has made the investments. We can do it. So let me just close with something Robert touched on and Bob will touch on, and we've got some of the folks in the room. I will make no excuses. I will not apologize to anyone within the broader labor movement because of the relationships that we attempt to build or are building with the owner community. I don't care what side of the political aisle they come from. I don't care what their political interests are. What I care about is somebody that wants to do business, who sits in a CEO's chair, who runs a major corporation, private or public, who's interested in doing business with the building trades, who's interested in 21st century labor relations, support for the regulatory and legislative issues that are important to their company or their industry, and our ability to recruit and train a workforce to meet their demand. I will not apologize to the AFL-CIO. I will not apologize to the CLC. I will not apologize to anybody because that's our business model. That's our most successful business model. And when we do that well, and we create the opportunities based on those relationships for everybody, everybody wins. That's not a popular position to have, particularly within the American labor movement. But that's how we're going to do business, no matter what the criticism, no matter what they say on the blogs, no matter who they say is in whose pocket, some of the terrible things that they write about what the building trades will be willing to do to get a job. We will continue to do that. We are looking for partners. We are open for business with everybody. So with that, I'd be remiss if I didn't say how proud Brent and myself and the entire governing board are, as Robert described, Bob Blakely, Asantha, Julie, Andrew, Chris and Lindsay, how they do so much with so little and work so hard and produce such great results. We have a fantastic team across 2 countries in the building trades that I'm fortunate enough to lead. And I couldn't be prouder of the work they do. I couldn't be prouder of their commitment. And the most important thing about them all is they understand who they work for. They work for rank and file members. They might take their direction from Bob Blakely and myself, but they understand at the end of the day they work for rank-and-file members and their families who depend on them to get the job done so they can maintain that lifestyle and that opportunity to live in the middle class in the United States and Canada. I thank them so much, and I thank you. Have a great conference.